In our looping structures, we're often going to want to be able to loop through a sequence of things or loop by number. And these sorts of loops are referred to as count-controlled loops, and they're usually done with a for statement. For statements in Python look very different than for statements in other languages. I'm not going to confuse you by showing what it looks like in other languages, but I will say that I like the Python approach to for loops significantly better. It gives us an option that doesn't exist as natively. You can do it all in any other languages. I just think that the code in Python is very elegant and very clean for doing for loops. And the thing I like best in Python is that we can give it a list of things and step through that list and do things to them. So we can do a list, and the way it looks like this is it's for number in, and then we're working with a list of numbers separated by commas, and they do not need to be in order. And like our while statements, it needs a colon, and then anything that's indented, we could keep going with additional lists here. Now with the while loop, we needed to increment or change things that we run. The for loop does that automatically. It will step through one step, then the other. So let's take a look at logically what happens. Number is treated as a variable. And each time we step through the for loop, we're going to start with our first one and work our way through to the end till we're done. So I'm going to put the results of the logic over here. So the first time we go through the for loop, we start with the first item in our list. So we would print 2 on screen. The second time we go through our loop, 4 would be the number, and we'll print number. Then it will move on to the next one, and when we print our number, it will be 6 and then 8. This is nice. This is something that would be fairly easy to do in other ways if we just wanted to count by 2s, and it would be something that would be fairly easy to do in other languages as well. But what I think is really cool is we don't have to just use numbers for our count-controlled loops, because it's really looking at the position of the numbers. These numbers don't have to be in order, and more important, they don't even have to be numbers. So let's take a look at another way of doing for loops, or actually the same way, with a different sort of variable content. So if we wanted to do something where we're getting input from a user, and I'm going to use where we're getting the rainfall per month, I would put in for rain in, and now instead of doing 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to do words, Jan. And I would actually type this out in Python code, but it's easier to represent it here this way. And I would be able to keep going through all 12 months. What we could do is rainfall equals input, and then you'd have to decide int or float, because we can actually do that conversion in one step. In the last time I went through getting input, in the next step we actually converted it, because when we get it as it comes in as a string, but here I'm going to want numbers for rainfall. And when I'm thinking of rainfall, I'm thinking that I could get 2.5 inches in a month. So to me, that's a floating point number, but it's still fine if somebody just puts in 2, it will just be 2.0 that the computer will correct it. So we can convert that to a float. Particular one I'm not going to look up right now, but it's either float or int. We convert it, and so then we would do input enter rainfall for, and then I'm leaving a space here. So imagine that there's a space there, plus rain. And so the user will enter in rainfall for each one. So then if I were going to total that, I would be doing something along the lines of total equals total plus rainfall. And then it would skip through to the next one. So we'd initialize with the rainfall, though it should be aligned with our for statement. We would initialize these variables, rainfall equals 0. And remember, that's our assignment operator, and we're initializing this so that we have it and it's empty because we could be adding with these. And then we're initializing total so that total has a number in it because you want to have something exist to add it to. So the first time I go through, and we'll walk through the logic on this as well for 3 steps. So the first time we're going to go through, and I'll change the values up here, rain in January. So it's going to display on screen, enter the rainfall for January. And we'll say that the user inputs 2.5. So that's stored in rainfall. Total now equals total plus rainfall. So total was 0. Total plus rainfall is 2.5. Then it's going to move on to February, and it will display on the screen, enter rainfall for plus February. And let's say that they enter in 3. So it will replace the value that was in rainfall. Rainfall will equal 3 plus 2.5. Actually, rainfall will equal 3. And then total will equal 3 plus 2.5, so that our total will be 5.5. And then we could keep going with that. And then with March, enter the rainfall for March. We'll say that is 5 inches. So rainfall would become 5, total would become 10.5. And once we have this, we could also be doing a count. We could have a counter counting out how many there are. There's different ways to get lengths of lists, and we could turn this into an average and do other processing with it. So what I really like is that we don't have to have numeric values here. We can just step through a list of string values and do something with each one. And so rain will act as our variable, having each one of those in sequence be in the rain variable. It is very common to do the initial sort of loop we did where we're working with numbers. But if you're just going to do a counter, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that, we can use the range option. So we can do for num in range and put in 1, 5, and then print num, and it should give 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But one of the nice things about doing it this way, we can also use variables. So let's say we wanted to create exponents. We wanted to square numbers by making them times themselves and put it on the screen. We can ask the user, so we'll have a variable of end point, and we'll have it equal to int input highest number to square. So that gives us our variable endpoint, and then we can work here. So for num in range 1, instead of having a static endpoint like 5, we will do 1, end point. So the user is defining how many times we do it. We can then do this where we have value equals end point times end point, and we could print end point plus space here squared, space afterwards, plus, and since it's a number, we're going to have to convert it, str, that's converting it to a string so we can concatenate it, value. And the way that would work if we start with 1, well, 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, and so forth. And we would keep going to whatever point the endpoint was that the user put in. If they put in 99, we'll go up to 99. If they put in 2, we'll go up to 2. So we can use user input to define how long our count is for that sort of loop.